He picked up the phone, and as he made his call, I stared at his desk. I realized I could read the referral slip upside down. The yard duty teacher had written, "Benched for 1 week." Teresa leaned toward me and whispered remorsefully, "I guess we should be benched for 2 weeks." She felt worse than I had expected. I glared at her and shook my head no. The principal put down the phone. "Well, young ladies, we should be benched for a week," I blurted. "I agree, and I don't want to see you back here any time soon." He signed the referral and sent us back to class. "How did you know to say 1 week?" Teresa asked on our way back to class. I could read what the yard duty teacher put on the slip. "Upside down," I told her. "Wow, you can read upside down?" Teresa said, her ponytail swinging like a pendulum. I didn't answer her. That night, I told my mother that I fell trying to jump rope double dutch. Teresa and I were confined at every recess and lunchtime to the same green bench next to the stucco wall of the cafeteria building. It was indisputably the bad kids' bench. Kindergartners and first graders had to file by to get to their classrooms, and they always gave us a wide berth, their orderly lines snaking away from us, then back in formation, as if our badness might be contagious. The bench faced the playground so the entire recess population could see who was not privileged enough to play. The yard duty teacher could keep an eye on us too, in case we decided to jump up and sneak in a hopscotch game. Indignant and humiliated, I refused to talk to Teresa, who didn't seem to have any inhibitions about being chatty. She bragged to me about all sorts of things, but I was aloof until she said, "My mom takes me to the big downtown library every Tuesday after school." So here we have the word remorsefully. All right, Teresa says, she leans towards the narrator and whispers remorsefully, "I guess we should be benched for 2 weeks." So the word remorsefully shows that she regrets what she did. Okay, remorsefully shows that Teresa is both sad and she is sorry for what she did. And up until this point, we only see Teresa as mean and tough. So being remorseful shows that she has a more thoughtful side, and maybe there's a kind side to her. I rode my bike to the small branch library near my house every weekend, but my parents both worked full-time and I couldn't always manage after-school activities or driving to the main branch. The big library had 100 times the selection of the branch library and a huge children's room with comfy pillows. They sometimes had puppet shows, story times, free bookmarks, and writing contests. So here we have descriptive details that are given about the main library that Teresa gets to go to. And this attracts the narrator because it has a larger selection than her local branch library. And we know that she loves to read books. So this is something that Teresa and the narrator both have in common. Of course, up until now, nobody would think they had anything in common. Yep, every single Tuesday I go to the big downtown library to check out as many books as I like. Before I could pretend I didn't care, I said, "You're lucky." I was suddenly jealous of Teresa, but I didn't want her to know how much. So I returned to my determined martyrdom. Instead of listening to her, I stared at the dirt and ignored her prattle. The week was over soon enough. The principal never called my parents. The other kids didn't seem to care that I had been disciplined on the bad kids bench. In fact, I actually detected a subtle reverence from some of my classmates. From then on, Teresa left me alone, and Mary Lou was my widely acknowledged ally. I didn't know how I'd ever repay her. So here it says at the bottom, how do the narrator and Teresa behave while they are benched? The narrator doesn't really talk to Teresa, but Teresa starts to, or she tries to become friendlier with her, and she talks with her anyway. Teresa brags about going to the big library, which makes the narrator jealous because she too loves to read books, but she's only able to go to the smaller library, the local library. A few weeks passed, and one of the girls in our class had a slumber party. All the fifth grade girls were invited. The barrage of females descended on the birthday girl's house with sleeping bags, pillows, and overnight cases. Mary Lou and I set up our sleeping bags right next to each other. The night progressed happily until someone suggested that we tell ghost stories. I hated ghost stories. I had far too active an imagination, which always took me much farther than storytelling. I couldn't seem to turn off the dark, scary world. If I saw even a slightly scary movie on television, my stomach would churn for days and I'd have to sleep with my bedside lamp on all night. Mary Lou must have felt the same, because she moved closer to me. We huddled together behind the avid listeners with our pillows almost covering our faces. There was no way not to listen. One girl told a particularly gruesome tale about a tree whose giant branches turned into fingers and could grab and capture children. Most of the girls squealed and clutched one another in mock terror before they ended up giggling. Already fraught with anxiety, I couldn't imagine how I would get through the night. I suddenly wanted to be in my own house, in my own bed with my parents down the hall and my trusty bedside lamp. There didn't seem to be any way out of the situation that wasn't humiliating. At least Mary Lou was by my side. Suddenly Mary Lou started crying. "I'm scared," she said. "I want to go home." Mary Lou had read my mind, but had voiced it with her own tears. One of the girls said, "Don't be such a baby." Others chimed in, "Mary Lou's a scaredy cat." "I'm calling my parents," said Mary Lou through her giant sniffles. "The baby's calling her mommy and daddy," the girls chanted. So they're all making fun of Mary Lou. She starts crying at the slumber party when the girls begin to tell the ghost stories. So she's scared just like the narrator. The narrator says that she doesn't like ghost stories because she has an active imagination. And once she watches a scary movie, she doesn't know how to turn off the dark, scary world after she hears a story, a scary movie or a scary story. Anything like this is too scary for her, and she um, she wants to leave this situation. I shivered in my sleeping bag, my stomach sick with fear, sick that Mary Lou was leaving, sick that I was next to a window, with a tree looming on the other side. Mary Lou headed toward the phone and didn't seem to care about the taunting. So she didn't care that they were making fun of her. She called her parents with her chin up, set down the phone, and methodically began packing up her things. My sleeping area looked bare without Mary Lou's sleeping bag and blanket. A tree branch brushed against the window from the wind. I was convinced it was the same tree from the story and that I would be its next victim. I stood up and began rolling up my sleeping bag. "I'm going home too. Mary Lou, can your dad give me a ride?" I heard more giggles. Then from across the room a small voice said, "Me too." Mary Lou nodded. I secretly celebrated. I knew that we'd suffer the consequences of the gossip and finger pointing at school on Monday, but now I didn't care. There was safety in numbers. As I dragged my things into the hallway, I saw the third person. It was Teresa. The three of us huddled on the front porch, waiting for Mary Lou's dad. In a final gesture of belittlement, one of the girls turned off the porch light, so we had to wait on the front steps in the dark, directly under the tree with the sprawling branches. On the other side of the door, the party howled with laughter. I was never so grateful to see station wagon headlights. Mary Lou's dad headed towards Teresa's house first. On the way, we were mostly quiet, but I felt happy. Happy I was going home to my own room. Happy that Mary Lou's tearful exit scene had been watered down by our group departure. I was puzzled, though, that Teresa had been frightened too. She always seemed so confident, so tough. In front of Teresa's house, she climbed out of the car and said, "So do you guys want to go to the big library with me after school on Tuesdays? My mom drives me and she could drive you too." I would love to go to the big downtown library on Tuesdays after school, I thought. But with Teresa? My mind battled with my emotions. Teresa eagerly continued, "My mom can call your moms too, make sure it's okay and everything." I hesitated. "Are you going?" I asked Mary Lou. "I can't," she said, "but you should go if you want to." Teresa sounded sincere enough. Mary Lou nudged me in the back seat as if to say, "Go." I finally nodded. It was a strange camaraderie, given our history. Teresa and I shared many trips to the library together on Tuesdays. I have often wondered if, in some convoluted way, Teresa's abuse had been an attempt to get my attention. She liked the library, and I always had my nose in a book, so she targeted me. Too bad for my legs that she didn't have better social skills, because she used to always kick her and bully her. Mary Lou is still my hero. If a person believes in the domino effect, the premise that one action triggers another, then I am deeply indebted to her. If she had never made me stand up to Teresa, I would have existed on the outskirts of fifth grade society, always defenseless. I would have never gained Mary Lou's respect or become her friend. I wouldn't have gone home with her that night at the slumber party. Instead, I would have suffered through my worst imaginings. And if it weren't for Mary Lou, I might not have had the opportunity or courage to accept Teresa's invitation to the big library on Tuesdays, which fueled my affection for books in a dramatic way. After all, I was entering the enemy's camp. It's sometimes easier to be brave if you have someone with whom you can stand beside or who you know is always standing behind you. Being Mary Lou's friend was always comforting, even when she revealed her own vulnerability. Big, strong people have fears, as do tiny, wiry people, and it often takes more courage to reveal a weakness than to cover it up. She was confident, determined, fair-minded, and unafraid of her emotions. I was her antithesis, naive, insecure, and desperately wanting to be a part of something. Mary Lou fit in because she didn't try to be anything but herself. I wanted to be just like her. So the narrator learns that it takes a lot of courage to reveal our weaknesses and that we're stronger when we have support from others. What do you think the theme of this story is, guys? The theme is to always be yourself. Do not be afraid to be yourself. Okay, at the end, the narrator says that Mary Lou is her hero. Why does she consider her to be her hero? Because she made the narrator stand up for herself. All right, she gave the narrator self-respect and courage. But Mary Lou is also her hero because she has a personality that is admirable. She has the traits of confidence, determination, the ability to show her feelings, and the narrator really admired Mary Lou for not being anything but herself. Okay, let's go back to the essential question. Our essential question was, what actions can we take to get along with others? We can try to understand other people's points of view. We can talk things over, look for common interests in order to get along with others.